Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about freedom cells. First, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com so you can make sure to get all of our latest content, including lots of other videos on freedom cells. I also want to invite you guys to visit and bookmark freedomcells.org. That's freedom, C-E-L-L-S.org, and it is a decentralized social network that allows you to connect with other people, to find people near you, to create or join local cells, with the purpose of creating more freedom in your communities, to collaborate, connect, build, and outgrow the state and the corporate power and the institutions that don't represent us. You can find a whole host of past videos we've done, including our most recent video on freedom cells and peaceful parenting. But today we're going to talk about freedom cells and how this concept can be applied to localizing food production. My goal here is to give you guys as many different examples of how this concept can be used, because as I've written in my books and talked about in past videos, the concept is essentially unlimited and could be applied, dozens, if not hundreds of different ways to various concepts and interests and subjects, just depending on what you want to get into and what your interests are. So we've talked about everything from weather emergencies, how a freedom cell could respond to weather emergencies, how freedom cell could deal with peaceful parenting, how a freedom cell could defend itself against violent cops or criminals or agents of the state, how freedom cells could be applied to protest movements like Standing Rock, how freedom cells, just a number of different ways, right? So today we're talking about localized food production. Now let's start by addressing the elephant in the room, which is institutions, companies, corporations like Monsanto and Bayer, who, as I'm sure you guys know, Monsanto, of course, has been rightfully receiving all kinds of hatred and anger over the past 8 years or so, 6-8 years, specifically with the creation of the March Against Monsanto, which more and more people marching and kind of rallying against this corporation and everything they stand for. Some people were concerned or upset about the use of genetically engineered, genetically modified foods. Others were upset or concerned with the abundant use of pesticides that comes along with these companies' products. And others were concerned for the environment or for the bees and things like that. Regardless of your stance, if you oppose the abundant use of pesticides, if you oppose factory farming, if you oppose industrial farming, if you're a vegan and you want to remove your support from these industries, if you're just somebody who wants to actually feel good about the food you're eating and not feel like you're supporting things that work against you. Because if you're an anarchist, if you're an anti-statist, if you're a freedom-minded individual, and you are supporting via your dollar and your financial support or your just time and energy, supporting companies that are receiving funding, subsidies from the state, from the government, then you're working against yourself. And Freedom Cells is about bringing principles and goals in alignment with our actions and actually working to remove ourselves away from those institutions that don't represent us. So, for my mind, that would mean getting a freedom cell together, 7 to 9 people, ideally 8 people, to come together and say, we're concerned about health, we're concerned about food. So how can we stop becoming dependent on the grocery stores, stop becoming dependent on Monsanto and Bayer and Syngenta and Dow Chemical and all these types of chemical companies that have got into the food supply? How do you do that? Well, the answer is localized food production. The answer is community gardens, backyard gardens, front yard gardens, urban farming, farmers markets, community supported agriculture, all kinds of different localized and, as much as possible, decentralized options for obtaining our food and for growing our food and producing our food and for selling that food. The other thing you have to think about is when you're supporting the mainstream food production systems, there's so many different costs, not just the cost of the food that you're, buying, but where did that food come from? Where was it grown? How far did it have to travel to get to your grocery store for it to be there? Most people have come to be used, especially in the United States and the Western world, to the idea that when we go to the grocery store, all the foods that we want are going to be there year-round, all the time. No matter if it's the dead of the winter and you want a watermelon, then it'll be there, right? And obviously this is unnatural. It's because we have this integrated international globalization world, which has some benefits, and some would say that the benefit is, well, I can have the watermelon year round, right? Without having to be in the season or in the climate where it's actually going to grow. I can just live where I'm at, and there will be food waiting for me at the grocery stores. And that's a positive thing. I'm glad that, we have those options for those of us that do. But again, we have to consider the cost of the fuel that's used to get the food to our grocery stores. All the environmental costs that come in with that, the impact. And not only that, let's say you don't even care about the environment. You're like, well, I just want my food whenever I want it. Think about the amount of dependence that places on the mainstream systems. So for example, if all of your food is constantly coming from the grocery stores, if everything that you and your family eat is dependent on the grocery stores, what happens when the shit hits the fan? Economic collapse, weather emergency, what have you. It could be any situation. In Houston, whenever the hurricanes hit, the grocery stores empty out within hours. The gas stations run out of gas. And for those who have no backup food, who don't have any sort of community supported agriculture, don't have a freedom cell that's been planting food and growing their own food, you're shit out of luck. You got to go loot and riot and try to get what you can for your family, or, just get whatever scraps you got left. Unless you were part of a freedom cell that said, let's be proactive. Let's think about this. Let's be forward thinking and think about what would we as a group do if a hurricane hit, if the dollar collapsed, if there was a martial law, if there was just, gas prices were skyrocketing. So then food prices started skyrocketing and we could no longer afford to shop at the grocery stores, or we could only minimally support the grocery stores. What would you do? This is what I believe freedom cells need to do, is to start having these conversations and then to come together and say, okay, well guys, look, we're not all expert gardeners here. Let's get together and let's find a community garden that works good for us, that's near our community, and let's go put time in there. Let's start, spending a couple hours each weekend, each of us learning about crops and what do you plant during different seasons, learning about companion planting, learning about natural pest removal, just learning about all kinds of aspects of growing your own food, right? And different things. You could learn about hugelkulture, you could learn about aquaponics, you could learn about hydroponics, you could learn about permaculture, which we're going to talk about in just a second. My point is that you as a freedom cell come together and say, this is something that we value, that we care about. And we are going to find a way to educate ourselves and become more empowered around this topic, rather than waiting for, somebody else to come save us, because that's not a good solution, to just sit and wait. So how do you start this? Well, as I said, your community freedom cell gets together and says, well, we want to learn more about permaculture. What does permaculture mean? For those who are brand new to permaculture, please do check our channel. I've written about what we call permagora, the combination of permaculture with the philosophy of agorism. And essentially permaculture is like taking the non-aggression principle, which many of us believe in, that we use in our relationships, and simply applying that to your relationship with the planet and with the land and with the earth. And instead of having agricultural methods that are very invasive and destructive, we have agricultural methods that are more in harmony and in balance with the planet and promote a coexistence, as opposed to what we have now. So there are various principles that go along with permaculture that I think are important, and I would invite each of you, this is a book on it, but honestly, if you just search a little bit, you'll find all the principles listed online, and you can learn more about this. My point is, this is what our Freedom Cell did, is we all wanted to learn about permaculture. So we found a documentary which was called Inhabit, A Permaculture Perspective, and we all decided, let's sit down and watch this together, let's take notes, and let's kind of share what we learned about it afterwards, and then let's regroup together and let's share our ideas. And then maybe you say, you two take permaculture on land, you two take permaculture on water, you two take permaculture, just divide whatever the topic is you're addressing. It could be aquaponics, it could be just normal traditional growing, it could be whatever it is. Maybe you guys want to learn everything you can about pesticides, anything that relates to food and growing food and local production. You can educate yourself about that. You can divide that topic up amongst your 8 people or however many you have, and then teach each other and educate each other and share and learn and grow together. And then you are starting to build these relationships of individuals who have the skills, who have the knowledge, and are starting to put some food in their backyards, in their front yards, or in the community garden, and becoming less and less dependent on the centralized food production systems, less dependent on the grocery stores, less dependent on the factory farming and the industrial farming, right? So this is all about creating more independence and more freedom in our lives. So you could also start going to farmers markets as a group and saying, hey, let's let's find out all the local farmers markets in our community, and let's go at least once or twice a week to a farmers market and see how much of our produce can we get from the farmers market that's going to be coming directly from farmers that we can talk to. Maybe you can even go visit those farms, as opposed to just being dependent on the centralized food production system. So my point here is that if we have freedom cells around the world investing in these ideas, and each cell is individually, like say down here in Houston, we're doing what we do, and then you guys over there in Dallas are doing your thing, and you guys over there in New York and then California and everywhere else in the US is starting to invest in this idea and starting to take it seriously. Well, before we know it, we're going to have a just massive amount of local farms, of localized food production, and more people who will survive any potential economic collapse or loss of grocery stores and things like that. Look at this. These are all various cells that people have created around the country and around the world. Some of them may not be active, but it's up to you to get on here and to make use of this site. If you want to do something with it, connect with people, build something, see who's interested in farming and gardening and permaculture and aquaponics. Learn whatever skills you can, teach them, share them with each other, share them with your community. And then if and when the shit hits the fan, you can go to your neighbor and say, here's some seeds, here's some tools, here's a little bit of backup food. And you can help other people, as opposed to forcing them to go get help from FEMA, their government, or go loot and riot and take their chances that way. So by being forward-thinking individuals now, we can save ourselves a lot of headaches in the future. And also, I think it's important for freedom cells to say, let's all make sure we have a backup supply of food, and to start going to the grocery stores, if that's where you have to start, with buying canned goods, buying good organic canned goods, produce that you can put away. Personally, I get a lot of canned goods jars from my grandmother's farm in Kentucky. She sends them down to me, and when I go out there to her farm, I get a bunch of stuff as well. And I put that away in some storage. I've got that hidden away in a place so that if I need to get out, I can jump in my RV with my supplies and get the heck out. It might be helpful for community members to also have plans for storing food and supplies in many different places. Now, I know for some of you, this idea is like, okay, we're talking about doomsday prepping, or people get this kind of weird idea of like zombie apocalypse type stuff. But what I'm really discussing here and talking about is thinking forward so that we can survive, because every single one of our ancestors survived and got us here by planning for the winter, by thinking ahead. And it's something that we as a species, with all our modern conveniences, have given up. We've given up a lot of skills and let other people lead our lives for us and take care of us. And that is going to be something that's going to bite us in the ass in the end. So I'm encouraging all people who are awake and active and aware and who think freedom cells is a concept that might work for them, or whatever you want to call it, to start thinking ahead and start putting some food away and start making sure that you have a support group, 7 to 8 other people that you also know they've got backup food. I can depend on them. We can depend on each other. We've got equal supplies. We've got equal knowledge. And then if some crazy scenario happens, you're in a better position than those who have done nothing but just remain dependent on the system. So thank you guys for listening. Once again, please do go check out freedomcells.org and join if you haven't. If you joined a while ago and there was nobody there, go check it again and see if anybody new has joined. And if not, you might need to be the one in your community to get it started. So put some effort in, put some time in. It will pay off. Also, please do bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. We've got lots of new content coming out. And that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.